Here we go. All right. So I get a chance today to, and so this is for the folks that are on Facebook. I want to say I get a chance to talk to Dr. Lathardus Goggins right here on, not only on Facebook, but for Shift Happens. So for those of you who may be watching, I want to set this up a little bit before I start talking. I originally encountered Dr. Goggins on the campus of Akron University. And there was almost like an ongoing joke that we had that this man had more degrees than the university offered.
Oh, you're talking about my father.
Oh, I'm talking about your father.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Oh, so wait a minute. So you heard all of that too, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so how many degrees did your dad have?
He had 3 terminal degrees. So he was Dr. Goggins. He had 3 or 4 master's degrees, and then a baccalaureate.
Okay. So wait a minute. So when I was just on doing my Facebook thing, and Dr. Tim, I forget what Dr. Tim's last name is it right? Just that quick, I forgot. He said, he put down when I said I was going to be talking to Dr. Goggins, he says the second. He put it in there, the second. So okay.
Yeah, right. So that is kind of I would say a joke in my family, but it is. My mother's Dr. Goggins.
Okay.
My father is Dr. Goggins, and then I'm Dr. Goggins.
Okay, and so you just have one doctorate.
I just have the one.
That's plenty.
I just have the one.
That's plenty. So I am so glad I get a chance to sit down and talk to you today. Tell me about, first I want to understand a little bit about your background before we jump off into a conversation.
Sure.
Tell me about yourself or what you want us to know. And then I'll get nosy. What else I want to know?
Easiest way to say it, I have been a advocate and scholar. Been an advocate longer than I've been a scholar, and then have been an educationist for the least amount of time, right? So I've been in education now for about 32 years. And I swore up and down I would never go into education. And in large part because my family was involved in education. I saw the work that it took. But also, like most kids growing up, you want to separate and not be in the shadow of, the Dr. Goggins. And so I will say I did my best, but I put a fair amount of effort to not be an educator. Let's say it like that. But the reality was, it was my calling. It was the thing that I was meant to do. My grandfather was an educator by not just training, but by again calling. My aunts on my mother's side, almost all of them are in education. So I come from this family of educators. And again, I swore up and down I would never go into it. And I just had all kind of lost son kind of stuff, right? Prodigal son issues. Until one day we would go down home. We would go home. I was born in Louisiana, so though I grew up here in Akron, home for me was always Louisiana. And one of the things that I always did, first thing, get out the car, take off my shoes, go find my grandpa. And this particular time he was out back, and this kind of, come up to him, was excited to see him. And I had graduated from college. So this would have been like 90, probably 91-ish or something like that. And he was always amongst the wisest folks that I know. He's my example of manhood that I often, in my mind's eye, particularly growing up, had. And I was struggling with some different things, and just out of the coming up to him, he was like, "Do you know what hell is?" I'm like, you just get out of the car, this 19-hour drive, and that's the first thing out your mouth. But again, he sensed I was struggling with these issues. And he said, hell to me will get up every day to go someplace I would not want to go, to do something I would not want to do. And that moment I realized, because I had been offered a position to work with kids, and I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. I'll volunteer. But I was holding down kind of different jobs as I was trying to find my profession. And I would forego sleep so that I could go talk to these kids. I could go do this. And this woman was trying to offer me a job. And I was like, nah, that's not what I want to do. And when my grandfather said to me, it stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, I could get paid to do something I would do for free.
Right.
And it was that moment that I kind of accepted with this all my life. And then, because I was in school, getting ready to trying to go for an MBA, because I was trying to shore up my business credentials. And I switched my graduate over to education, and had my first education philosophy class, and I never looked back.
That's good. There's so much I can say about that, but that whole idea of telling you exactly what hell is just gives me goosebumps, because I try to say that, a lot of times people think that it's about the money, and sure, money is helpful. Money is one thing, but that passion, that happiness, that calling, and it sounds like this is that you're walking in your calling.
Yeah.
Ancestrally is in your blood. And so to be able to do what it is you're called to do is amazing and a beautiful thing.
It was powerful. And then shortly thereafter, I was formally introduced to Rites of Passage. It was a group here in Akron called Akibalan Shiro. That's what formed. It was a group of activists that was, involved with working with young people, culturally competent, culture, understanding African philosophy and the importance of Black history and Black culture, that kind of stuff. So now that spoke to me. And I was, in undergrad, I was involved with Black United students and all that kind of stuff. So I had that in me, but the Rites of Passage learning or the training gave me a framework. It gave me a language. It gave me a way of understanding so much about what my family had provided for me, though they didn't call it Rites of Passage. But it was, and a lot of things all of a sudden made sense. And what then I wanted to do was to learn to be the scholar about why it made sense and why, how it impacted me, what my family provided for me culturally protected me in so many ways. And with this new sense of purpose, provided motivation to do well in school and all this other kind of stuff that that became powerful. And so I became a scholar in that. And so it was those two combinations of my grandfather wisdom and providing that aha moment for me, right? Because I had all this stuff in me, but it was that clarity that when he spoke it, so in his very plain, soft-spoken kind of way, but just powerful, that aha moment, and then being introduced formally to rites of passage, to have the language and the understanding of the process and begin to delve into the model of it was the transformative moments for me professionally and as a scholar.
So, I was at Akron U during that time, and I will tell you that there was so much going on the campus. I spent a couple of years being president of Black United Students, and was very active in the All African People's Revolutionary Party at a certain point with Carl
Lewis,
and
Carl
Deborah.
Lewis, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
And I was exposed to so much, and in between what I called the Kent and the Akron U connection, would go over to Kent State and listen to Naeem Akbar and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and all of those folks. I definitely understand, and even looking at some of us that came out of Akron U at that time, I love the way that it has imprinted, because it's one thing to just be in academics, is something else to have superimposed over that the African identity that comes out of the programs that you do. As a matter of fact, I want to call somebody else's name, but I at the moment it escapes me. The brother with the storytelling and the power of myth and the drumming.
Dr. Kwame Scruggs.
Yes. So it was like all of us were in that beautiful, amazing soup, and it's just beautiful. And Dr. Timothy Wright is sending his hellos to you as well.
Good brother. He's that's another story right there. But he's the one who helped me get on the drum line at the at Bookto back in my high school days. That brother helped me out a lot. But he was working with limited talent, so I ended up going to bass trumpet.
It's all good. It's all good.
Good brother.
So I want to. There are a lot of people who have not been in that kind of a cocoon that we're talking about. So you will see people who still reject even the notion that we have a need for programs like rites of passage. Can you tell us a little bit about rites of passage and what it is, and some of the essential elements, why it's important?
Well, the quick answer is, it is the universal way in which humans develop, period. Any process of human development, when done well, will follow the rites of passage process. And I'll talk about that in just a minute, what the actual stage of the process is. So much so that if you look in history, any group of people that seek to exploit or oppress another group of people, they always address the rites of passage process. It is so built into our human makeup that when a community fails to provide the process to the youth will create one for themselves, right? So the real question, it really isn't, it will never be if rites of passage or not. The only real question is what type of rites of passage you're involved in, and do you recognize what you're being transformed into, right? That's really the fundamental question. So when we talk about rites of passage, and I advocate, I advocate and identify a 4-stage process. In anthropology, they typically talk about it as a 3-stage process, but when doing so, they presuppose the first stage. And so I identify it. So the first stage being preparation. That stage in which, as a non-member or initiate, learns, practices what it means to be a member. The second stage, separation. That is the stage in which you're tested. You go into the wilderness, or you face the challenge. You face this opportunity where you have to prove yourself. And typically it is a proof to the elders, or proof to a higher power that eventually becomes something that you internalize, is recognizes that, oh, the power is within you all along, right? Or that kind of a thing, right? You've been prepared for this. This is the thing that you've been prepared to do. And so, though facing the challenge and facing the test, and in seeking approval from the elders, you ultimately are coming into self-awareness and self-acceptance. Then the third stage is to transition. This is typically the ceremony. This is where the initiate receives some type of token, some type of recognition, some symbol that marks the competency, the skill, the knowledge, the transformation, and then reincorporation. Having met the challenge, having gained the skill, having been recognized and transformed, you are now expected to go back into your community and perform, be able to do the thing that you've been tasked to do. And with that comes both burden and privilege, right? That if I am now this a competent person, then I get the benefit, the privilege that comes with that level of stage of life. But it also means that when the community needs this thing, you're expected to be able to do it, right? So it is both with privilege and burden. And ultimately, that whole cycle, that whole process is just preparation for the very next stage of life, or the very next stage of development, right? So it is a cyclic type of idea. You see it time and time again. Moses, so the time that he spent as Pharaoh's grandchild, learning administration, learning the law, learning the Ma'at, learning all these different things about how to not only be a leader, but a principled leader, right? Goes off into the desert, the separation, where he then has to prove himself to but he had to prove himself.
Right. He had to make it through.
Right? And had to serve so many years just to get approval. And then when he had gotten approval from the elder, sees the burning bush, goes up, and is transformed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It then has another challenge that he must meet. But having demonstrated what he had learned, the humility and those kinds of things, and even with his sense of doubt of hearing his calling, and be like, well, I don't talk well, all this other stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? But he faces the challenge and is transformed, comes down off the mountain, reincorporated, go now free your people, right? And serves as an administrator. And so all the things that he learned in the palace becomes things that allows him entry into the palace, to be able to know what's going on here,
Mm-hmm.
but also to be a leader to the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you see that full process. And you can go through time and time again, every story that in the Bible you talk about, you're going to see this process of preparation, separation, transition, reincorporation. Paul, right, from Saul to Paul.
Mm-hmm.
As Saul, he was the persecutor of Christians, right?
Right.
Persecutor of the churches. But how do you become a persecutor? How do you become a prosecutor, right? You got to know the stuff. You got to know where they are, what they're doing. You got to know what the compelling argument is. You got to, all that kind of, you know the system in order for you to prosecute it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he does that. But all that end up being preparation. Road to Damascus,
Mm-hmm.
separation. Here's a challenge. Go over to, I don't know some of my names here, but I think it's Silas's house or go over to the house.
Mm-hmm.
And, here's what you do. Got approval, scales come off, transition, reincorporation,
Mm-hmm.
go back and serve, right? And becomes the most prolific apostle, right? But so much of what he knew as the persecutor becomes the thing that he uses as the apostle, right? And so that process, and the most simply, that if I have a child and I expect for my child to be an adult at 18, I don't wait until they're 18 to prepare them to be a child. To be an adult, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
At 5 years old, we're working on it because the expectation is here. So that's the powerful piece of rites of passage. And what it does, it situates people, human beings, in their culture, their heritage, and connect them to a creator and a sense of purpose. That combination is powerful. Combination is powerful. And it doesn't mean that you don't face challenges, but when you face a challenge, you're better equipped to deal with it, and you're better able to make meaning of the challenge.
Yeah, and I think it gives you more confidence in your ability to rise to the challenge.
Exactly.
It's interesting because as you were talking about it, one of the things that that Joseph Campbell might say is that that is the hero's journey.
Exactly.
That all of us go through on some level, whether it is we are consciously doing it or unconsciously cast into it. And this ability for us to rise to the occasion is basically the creation of our hero self. So I can remember when I first went to Akron, because I'm a Clevelander, and I first went to Akron, and there was this, I had a certain feeling about my experience there, But when I reflect on all the things that happened to me, whether or not it was at Akron itself, or when I went overseas to go to school and then came back, there was the transformative processes that I went through. I'm thankful and grateful for all of the experiences that, even the negative ones, right? Because sometimes what that looks like is sometimes what it looks like is getting arrested. You know, and then having the ability to use that as a springboard into something else. Sometimes it looks like being ostracized, outcast, and maneuvering through that. I mean, this shows up in all kinds of ways, but now you have created a system to help people move through it in a way that gives guidance.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of pushback.
Okay.
I dare not say that I created it.
Okay.
What I hope I did was help illuminate this. Again, this is a part of being a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly as Black folks in this country, in this society, the education as the concept writ large that we receive seeks to remove us from our African heritage, seeks to remove us and break this cycle of authentic self, right? Because as who's it? Nat Turner said, I had too much sense to be a slave, right? That having a sense of yourself and your creation and being connected to the creator doesn't create the disposition for being enslaved, right? Having a true sense of yourself doesn't create the disposition to accept second-class status, right? So in this country, so much of what has been done, and you look at what they're trying to do even currently with the laws and trying to limit history and critical examination of history and that kind of stuff, is still trying to separate Black folks in particular from a true sense of themselves. Because because a person who has an authentic understanding of themselves just does not accept inferior status. Right. So and reject white supremacy. So much of what that is. So all I have to say, what I hope I did and try to do, what I advocate in my scholarship, is to illuminate this process. Okay. And move it from the unconscious, because in many ways we're going to do this process anyway. But the only real question is, are you, your family, your community, actively engaging the process with a deliberate focus on connecting young people and people of the community to the purposes, the intent of the creator? Or are you being manipulated to serve someone else's purposes?
Well, we see this, what you've just described, we see this over and over again in society. And I might dare say that it's not just aimed at people of color, but or by and large, it is the American population that they want to keep you asleep and disconnected, so that we are not questioning or giving pushback on the policies that they have at hand. This is how capitalism works, and let me take your money. This is how the system of whiteness even disengages whites from their own self. in a concerted effort to make other people the enemy. This has been something that has been going on all along, and we are continuously being stripped, I guess you could say, of this sense of person, of ourselves and our own worth that comes inherent in us being human beings.
Right.
But sometimes I heard Dr. Gabriel Mate say something that was very interesting. He talked about this thing that that happens to us where we refuse to look at even what is there. That it could be something that is apparent and built in, because I'm a minister now, and I know that built into religion is this idea of not to question the guidance that you're receiving, almost as if it is, you shouldn't even, lean not to your own understanding, right? And so there is this turning away from what you know to be true in favor of what you've been told. So so the way that a lot of times we interpret this stuff, and I know growing up, I heard stuff like that, like you're asking too many questions. I didn't grow up with a doctor in my house, right? It was do as I say.
I got that. Oh, I got that too.
So there's this, I used to say we become estranged from ourselves. There's like a cognitive dissonance that occurs when we've got, when we're at war even within ourselves, because we can't reconcile one thing with another. We come up on, we talk about this in terms of us and our community, but even as we look out at, and I step on any toes, but even as we look out at what's happening with Israel, people have been conditioned to say, I'm with Israel, without ever questioning, what does that mean? Right? If you're with them, then who are you? What are they against, or what's going on? We don't even question that anymore. And so this whole thing is this, there's a lot of times people we're walking through life sleepwalking, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah, so much, right? So that cognitive dissonance piece, right? And what you described, just in the terms of working out our humanity, right? That is just in and of itself a thing. Layer on top of that, in this country particularly, the I have to say it plain, the white supremacist racist notions of African inferiority, right? So not only as human beings, we're struggling with our better selves, right? That's just a struggle of humanity, that we have enough enlightenment to know that we are animals, but more. And so that but more, that image of God, that part that requires of us to do not just our instincts, but to aspire to be more than just an animal, right? That's a struggle for all of us. But then you have various systems in which people find themselves not just dealing with that, but in a system that asks them to not tap into their own cultural resources and to operate in a system that seeks to make you subhuman
Mm-hmm.
and not access the things that make you human,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to adopt values and practices that were designed to keep you from your humanity in order to practice and prove your humanity, right? That's the kind of craziness, pathology, cognitive dissonance, dual consciousness that comes into play. Yeah, and you said so much there that even dealing with even like I said, dealing with these some of the newest or the latest issues and laws. We're dealing with Ohio and these kind of things about trying to limit conversations in the classrooms about this.
Mm-hmm.
While the impact, the impact is on, is about our history and those kinds of things, which to me was always the issue of, I don't need anybody's permission to talk to my children about my family and my people, right?
Mm-hmm.
While of course, as a taxpayer and as a person who supports public education, y'all need to teach the truth, and I'll advocate for that. But at the end of the day, my children understanding their heritage is my responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I need no one's permission for that, period.
Mm-hmm.
Full stop, right? But these policies, while they impact us and are often targeting our history, they're meant to address what you were talking about in terms of those questionings that young white people were doing in support of George Floyd and these kinds of movements, right? When they did the analysis of the 2020 election, what they found was young white folks who engaged in meaningful conversations with diverse communities were less likely to support a particular candidate, let's say it like that. Now, I don't know where we are and what all this means with but you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So those policies, again, while the content issues are often our histories and not wanting to discuss our histories and critically examine history from our perspectives, what they're meant to do is to address young white folks from not having conversations and questioning the prevailing narrative so that they don't critically think going into the ballot box.
Yeah. So I often wonder though, because I will tell you, Dr. Goggins, that I am a rebellious by nature. And what you tell me to not do is usually exactly what I do. As a matter of fact, it's biblical. Eve did it. Adam did it. And so when you ban a book, I wonder if that has a tendency to backfire. Like when you start talking about what we're not going to talk about, if that means that automatically it becomes a way to penalize teachers, but if that then causes something else to crop up in its stead. I love the way that nature shows us that it has a way of compensating when, say for instance, we think that it's, oh, man has destroyed something else, but then there's this compensation because there is always, it seems like, a responsiveness, because everything is alive. There's a responsiveness that causes other things to happen. So I wonder if this is possibly going to backfire in a way that is unanticipated.
I would tend to agree with you, but history tells us when you're committed to the lie, the truth doesn't matter. No matter how many times the truth will prevail.
Oh, but that darn lie will eat you out from the inside out. That lie,
time and time
corrosive.
again, time and time again. But yet, when you are committed to the lie, what is your alternative, right? Yes, banning books tend to make the books more popular. But what's your alternative? Because the truth will prevail, right? It only takes a match to chase away the darkness, right?
Yeah.
So what is once the light is lit, what is your alternative? Your only choice is try to extinguish it. And you may extinguish it for a moment, but there will be another one. Right? As Martin Luther King say, the moral arc of the universe may be long, but it is bent towards justice.
Yes.
Right? It may take a while, but it's gonna, justice, the truth will prevail.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
Right? No matter how many times the devil shows up, the trickster shows up and tries to trick, at the end of the day, he knows, if you want to give it a person to personalize it, but the trickster knows that it's a losing game. At the end of time, the truth will prevail. Period.
Yes.
That's the absolute.
Yes.
Right? But those people whose identities are built on those tropes, those people whose identities are so fragile, they can't have a truthful conversation. What alternative do they have other than to keep on trying to tell the lie?
Right.
Because to tell the truth changes them.
So I want to shift a little bit, because I could stay in that area all day with you, because it's it's so good. But what I want to shift to, I was on this jury duty thing, and I am constantly talking to people since I learned about the effects of trauma on our community. And, sometimes we like to talk about the things that happen with our brothers out here on the street. We like to just talk about this in response to the situations that they find themselves in. But when we talk about trauma, we talk about trauma from a standpoint of trauma begins sometimes even in preceding generations.
For sure.
So when we have, through enslavement, people did not have the ability a lot of times to nurture their own children. So we come up with this natural sense of abandonment in our bones because a parent can't give to you what they didn't receive as a child. So we've got generations of trauma in our community that causes us to have a certain level of detachment, disconnect, all of those things. Tell me a little bit about how you perceive or dare I say, through the programming that you offer, how you address some of the trauma that our young people are experiencing.
Okay, so again, you asking these layered type questions.
I
So,
told you.
you must do this for a living.
Conversation.
So yeah, trauma informed has become one of these buzzwords over here recently. And at the end of the day, when you look at yes, so how does it impact us, right? So it is epigenetic. As they talk about this idea of a mother can experience a trauma, and within that one generation, it has a genetic impact on the child, right? That a child who is developed with in a stressful, traumatic environment, is certain genes are turned on, so that child is predisposed to be sensitive to trauma, and that lends itself towards hypervigilance and hyperactivity and that response to it, right? And that's a part of our genetics, right? That as human beings, we are predisposed to pay attention to the one thing that might kill us, right? 99 times we go, nothing happens. I don't have to think about that, because the 99 times ain't nothing going to happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
But that one time, at that one place, in that one situation, right? That's the thing that our brain is designed to pay attention to. And so when we are traumatized, and we are and we live in an environment in which we're always looking for that one thing, the one thing. And even when we are in a situation where 6 times out of 10, nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
But 4 times out of 10, something pops off. That stress impacts our ability to live, right? To be in a constant state of flight, fight, freeze,
Mm-hmm.
lock, all those traumatic responses wears on the body. It impacts our ability to process and remember and do these kinds of things. We stay. We talk about the parts of our brain. That kind of reptilian part of reaction. So much so that our frontal lobes, the part that makes us human and creative and those kinds of things, don't get developed, because we don't have the opportunity to imagine and practice, and because we're always, that kind of thing, right? And these are very broad brushes, but it does have an impact,
right,
over time, right? And so one of the things I love, what's his brother named Dr. Sean Jenwright, he talks about, yes, we should recognize, we should be trauma informed, know that trauma exists. Yes, we should be trauma sensitive, right? That we should not only know that it exists, but we should be sensitive not to further the harm, to reproduce the harm in our practices. But ultimately, he says, we have to be healing centered. We have to get to where we're not just recognizing trauma, not being sensitive to the trauma, but how do we actually move to healing? And one of the major components of his healing-centered approach is restoration of the identity. Okay. And when I so understanding that, how do we get back to the authentic self? And this is where we get back to, I think, use of rites of passage. How do we, when you think about what makes something traumatic, when I do these developments and I do my trauma-informed talks, I often show, get your little dog there. I show little dog comes into the room. Are you traumatized? You get various answers. I said, now, a tiger walks into the room, right? Whole different story. So what's the difference? And at the end of the day, what makes something traumatic is, one, your sense of power. I don't know how to, I'm doing my thumbs, I get these little bubbles popping up.
Okay, that's you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Zoom is well, anyway.
Yeah.
But your sense of power. What do I have the wherewithal to address this? Do I have a coping strategy? Do I have the tools? Do I have a strategy to deal with this? Predictability, right? I say, if I tell you next Tuesday at 5 o'clock, I'm going to bring a tiger. Are you traumatized? Most folks are like, nah. Why? Because next Tuesday I'm not showing up. Right? If I have predictability, if I know what's coming, then I can put a plan into place. I can exercise. I have power to execute my plan. Right? So those are the kind of things that make trauma traumatic. Lack of power, lack of a coping skill, lack of predictability. Okay. And ultimately, what also comes with that is this collective work. Because if I have people I can connect with, then I'm better resourced with developing strategy, power, and predictability. We can come up with a plan to put into place, right? So with all of that addressing trauma, how do we address trauma in our community, particularly with young people? How do we provide them opportunities to see themselves as powerful, right? So this is using voice, problem-based learning, in which they address a real issue and see the work that they're doing actually making a difference, right? Developing the skills, being able to see, here's what's going on. This is why it's going on. Here's a strategy to address this. Let's practice this. Right? And again, the predictability. If you do these things, the natural consequence is these things will happen. And when you can see that happening, it goes on. Again, dealing with the police, a part of the traumatic is I can be following the rules. I know what my rights are as a citizen. The unpredictability is it'll still get me shot.
Right.
Right? So again, how do we address this trauma? Empower. Provide and empower in a sense that it is organic and authentic. It comes from within the experience and is connected to who I am. How do we then build the skills and provide opportunities to see my effort, my power actually make a positive difference? And then predictability, to to see how, again, the things that I plan, the things that I do shows up in real ways in the life and the community in which I live. Okay, so
wow, that was more than I anticipated getting. That was good. That's good.
This is but yeah, that healing centered engagement, Sean Jenwright, his framework is powerful, and at the center of that is the restoration of identity.
That's good. That's good. So and now I'm really like at my time limit, but I want to not let you go until I ask about successful academics.
Success Academics, that is my website. My actual two companies, if I get my finger pointed right here, my two companies is Applied Academic Solutions. That is my consultancy where I do work working with nonprofits, school districts, teachers around the things that we're talking about. So authentic identity development and its impact on academic performance. I do professional developments around social emotional learning, SEL, positive behavioral intervention strategies, PBIS, restorative practices, and trauma-informed healing centered engagements. I provide services around that, and then also effective community outreach. St. Rest Publications is my publishing company, which published my books, and I have a what do you call it? A print Black Star Classics, where I'll have some of the classic Black publications that are in public domain, and I'll provide through that. But I also have prints, posters, banners, T-shirts through St. Rest Publications and that. So it just and Successful Academics is a website where you can get connected to the various things that I'm doing. I have Black Child SEL, different resources around social emotional learning, in particular, in light of the Black child. I have a resource on anti-racism, but Successful Academics is the place where you can get connected to the work that I'm doing.
You know, I want to thank you for this conversation. It has stirred up so much inside of me. I can't even tell you how much it has stirred up inside of me. And one of the things when I mentioned Carl's name, All African People's Revolutionary Party, what I thought to myself is as much as I think that I'm doing, that brother impacted that conversation around that impacted my life to such a degree that I first found myself wondering, after we talked about that, who's doing that now? And if I can identify somebody to assist us doing that type of work, I'll just put it that way, that type of work, then maybe it is up to me to get engaged a bit more, because that was a powerful, transformative experience. Dr. Donnie Tyler was there with me, as well as so many other people that came up out and through Akron U. I am while I might have had some criticisms about it, I can't help but be honored by the work that was done through that university and your father. So this is such an honor. I thank you.
I appreciate the invitation, and yes, this has been good.
I'd like to do this again at some point.
Hey, whenever you want to, just let me know. Just let me know. This was real cool and was good. and appreciate again the opportunity. Brother Lewis challenged me. We also got to call out Kim McClinic back in the day with Juan, West Akron Neighborhood Development.
Mhm.
And there's some brothers that are still around. John Fuller is still, you know, hey, still in the struggle. Kwame Spruggs is doing work and doing a phenomenal job. Terrence Shelton is still around doing work. Mama Isi, Sandra Bryant with is doing. There's still a list of folks that are still in the struggle. Lily Jackson with the Greater Akron Association of Black Social Workers. There's a Council of Elders. There are people that are doing this work. There's a struggle. We lost some great folks. Just recently, we lost Dr. Dorsey. And you know, the struggle continues, right?
Some of these names I haven't heard in forever since I was in Akron. But I wonder if or what the model is that we have here in Cleveland. I remember coming Neil Holmes, who I sometimes am in contact with.
Brother Neil.
Him bringing me here to Cleveland to meet some of the Cleveland branch of the AAPRP.
So you know, but you know, there's in Cleveland, you know, there's a number of folks that Brother Paul Hill, Elder Hill is doing work. You talking about somebody multiple doctorate. David Qua Whitaker is around and doing work, and so there are a lot of folks, and there's a bunch of folks that, you know, particularly in the Cleveland area. This is a bunch of folks.
Yeah, I have to tap back in.
For sure. And where we met most recently, the sister there, Pam.
Pam Hubbard.
With Golden Cypress. So there's a lot of people doing a lot of good work that are sometimes, you know, under the radar because they're not the big and, you know, stuff and you know, the folks that got this African-centered mindset, kind of people respect it, but they don't know how to embrace it really, because, you know, you're over there doing all the African stuff, you know, thing, which is a whole nother discussion about how so many of people, particularly in the church, we'll talk about this, say that, reject African in name, but when you look at how they do what they do, it's African. You know, you go. You know, if we're serious, we gonna touch and agree. Right, that's African. If we're real serious, we're gonna put a circle around it. That's African. You know, all that kind of stuff that we do that comes out of our African culture, but we are afraid to identify it as such.
It's interesting. It's interesting how we and this idea of estrangement is always there, always prevalent with me. How much we kind of reject in as a part of ourselves, because even music and movement and all that other stuff is out of our heritage. So,
and imagine that we could get that estrangement and get that full power. But yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. I'll be in touch. Yes. All right.
All right.
Have an amazing day.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, y'all. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. And of course, this will be up on my page. So please like and share it. All right. Take care. All right. Bye.